everyone, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Sat Sri Akal. My name is Farheen Khan and you're watching the Azeeza show. Today we're actually going to talk about a topic that I don't think we often speak about, and that's about grief and loss. There are a lot of people in the community who we've heard have lost family members or husbands or wives, children, parents, etc. And sometimes it's really hard to figure out how to navigate when something like this happens. So we'll have two guests with us today, and the first guest that's joining us about this topic is Shabnam Datu. So thank you, Shabnam, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Farheen.
Yes, so Shabnam, I know I call you Auntie, but here we're calling you Shabnam.
Please do, please
do. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. I'm a resident of Mississauga for the past 40 years. I've also am a retired customer care specialist of a major telecommunications company. I've got 3 children, beautiful children, 4 adorable grandchildren. I'm also a grieving mom of a 27-year-old son, my youngest and only son. This is about the 17th month that I'm in grieving. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us, can you share with us what happened and, what grief means to you?
Sure. First of all, grief equals love. That's what I think. Grief is the measurement of love. Mm-hmm. And it's the deep connection you have with your loved one, mm-hmm. the one that passed away. Grief is a very unique journey for each individual. Right. I think it's based on your relationship with the person who died. Right. It's also based on the circumstances surrounding the death.
The death, right.
That's correct. My son was diagnosed with congenital heart disease.
Right.
And due to complications of congenital heart disease, he passed away at the age of 27. I was blessed to have 27 years with him because he only had 48 hours to live when he was born. Alhamdulillah, God blessed me with those 27 years. Right. So I was, of course I was devastated. Every person that loses a loved one is. For sure. It was the worst day of my life. Mm-hmm. It was like somebody had ripped a piece of my heart. I wasn't clear in my mind. My mind was so foggy. It was disbelief, shock, anger, all these emotions, these difficult emotions that you've never experienced. Right. And it's hard to comprehend, such a traumatic loss. And you try to understand why, You feel helpless though. There is no immediate answer. Right. So what you do is, obviously, you turn to people who are around you. Right. But at that time, when people are talking to you, you don't really hear them. Right. Your mind is so foggy. You don't know if you want to sleep or you want to be awake. Most of the time I was awake because I was just waiting for my son to come through the front door. And it was difficult. It's unexplainable. It's very excruciating, that pain. And that's when I realized that this is the beginning of my grief journey. And I knew it was going to be very difficult.
Right. Well, thank you for coming on the show to talk about it, because it's, obviously it's very difficult.
I did want to talk about it because I did want to talk about my son.
Right.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
And can you tell us about him?
Of course, he was witty, funny, very passionate about helping the poor and the needy and the homeless, and because we were always at the hospital downtown. Mm-hmm. And anytime he passed a homeless person and a hungry person, he had always had something to give. Right. So when I look at that and I look at the kind of person he was, it makes me feel that he is in a very good place. And I feel that. I do feel that. Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. So how do you, you know, I know you said that the journey is different from each person, but for you personally, how did you cope? What did you do to keep yourself going?
Very different things I did. Of course, I, turned to faith a little bit more than I normally did,
Right.
of course, and we all do that. I think it's just one of those things we do.
For sure, when we're going
Natural.
through different times.
It comes natural.
Yeah.
I, of course, have a bunch of wonderful friends. And it's funny how this works because your friends become family.
Mm-hmm.
Strangers become friends. It just works that way. It's more like the divine's plan or something. It just becomes that way.
Mm-hmm.
You're not looking for it, but it helps. That's how you get the help you need. Of course, I have my wonderful daughters that I can, they're grieving in their own way, but I know that I can pick up the phone and call them at any time and they know why I'm calling.
Right.
It's not just to say hello.
Right.
When I'm upset, they know.
Right.
And it's the same with my friends. I have an incredible bunch of friends, and they're just amazing. I had to say this.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
And can you tell us about these paintings?
Yeah, going forward with my grieving process, like I said, I turned to faith. I didn't stop focusing on my hobbies and my interests. I do paint, and that's how I started painting. And I painted birds for a reason.
Right.
I was reading a quote or a poem where it was all about birds, and I don't remember that because it was a while ago. And it was just after my son passed away. And I think it was about an eagle.
Mm-hmm.
But I drew different birds.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, I painted different birds.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did end up with painting an eagle. And the reason I painted the eagle is because the eagle soars high, even when there's a storm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the poem was about that. The eagle soars high when there's a storm.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't run away. It doesn't hide like other birds do. So anybody out there that's lost a loved one, that doesn't know what to do, I think we need to take that example and soar high and take our mind and our heart and rise above towards Allah. I think that's what will give you some peace and some solace.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I continue to do that. I continue to my hobbies, like I said, volunteering with different organizations.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and there's one that's who is Hussein that serves meals at CRC
Oh, great.
every 3 months. Every 2 months, and I do that.
Wonderful.
Yes, and the Daily Bread Food Bank.
Right.
This was something that my son always wanted to help. He always did that every first Friday of the month, would donate food at the food bank. So I continue to do that, yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
So what advice would you give to anybody who, did you access like grieving counseling and?
I went online to look at some of the services that the region of Peel offers. Mind you, I didn't go personally in there because I think it's a time when you really don't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
You don't want to dress up and go out. You don't want to interact with anybody. It becomes very difficult to actually get up.
Right.
Put your feet on the ground and start your day. It's just something that I can't explain, but you have to do that.
Sure.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out and interact with people, but I think in the beginning it's very difficult. although I looked at all the resources and I researched them, I didn't actually go. But I think for those people that really need the help, that support is there.
Right.
You know, through their grieving. I don't think it hurries the grieving process. I think it just gives that extra support when they are grieving.
Right.
And I think they probably have the tools and how to cope and things like that.
Right, exactly.
You know, if somebody is really alone and doesn't know where to turn to, I think they give you those tools.
For sure, especially for those who are not surrounded by family or friends.
Exactly,
right?
somebody who doesn't have anyone
It's
around.
even, I mean, it's still difficult no matter what.
It's very difficult, no matter what.
To have, you know, supports and to be able to cope, for sure.
It's absolutely right.
That's great. Well, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much. Do you have any last minute thoughts before we go?
Absolutely, I do. I want the viewers to know that the reason I probably am here and I feel this is because this is part of my healing journey.
Right.
I also feel that the divine works in mysterious ways, and maybe somebody out there is experiencing a loss and needs some kind of peace.
Right.
Maybe if they're watching this, they'll find it, and I have all the compassion for them.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. All right, everyone. So we'll be back for after a quick break, and then we'll have our next guest join us as well about the topic of grief and loss. Hi everyone, welcome back from the break. We just were speaking about grief and loss, and before the break we had Auntie Shubnam, as I call her, on the show, and now with us in studio we have Sister Yasmin Merchant. Sister Yasmin, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So Sister Yasmin, you know, before the break we were talking to Auntie Shubnam, and we asked her about her story and sort of what, you know, loss meant for her, and I know also that you've lost somebody in your life, and it's you know, as we were talking about, I think it's important to have the conversation, right? And
yes.
To be able to share. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a mom, I have 4 kids. Was married for about 22, 23 years.
Right.
I started off completing my degree with, in microbiology, and then I continued with a degree in education.
Right.
And I worked in education as a teacher for many, many years. And then I switched careers, and now I'm a real estate agent.
Okay.
So tells you a little bit about me.
Excellent. That's wonderful. And Sister Yasmin, what does loss mean to you, or what does grief mean to you, and what is it like to experience loss?
Well, I guess loss you can experience on so many different levels.
Right.
You know, sometimes you lose, you know, something small but was very important to you, and then you're like, oh, what happened to it? Maybe you misplaced it, or maybe it fell out of your hands.
Right.
But then there's also the grief, I think, is on like a different end of that spectrum of loss.
Right.
Where you've experienced loss of something that's so dear to you that you, even though you know that everything in this world is temporary, you still are attached, especially to people.
For sure.
So I think grief is when you've lost someone, or sometimes it could be even, I think, when people lose their position or a job. I've seen people experience a type of grief in that case as well. But for me,
Right.
it's really the loss of my husband
Right.
that where I've experienced intense grief.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. I know, you know, your husband, Brother Danish, was very near and dear to many people,
Yes.
including myself, and, you know, we really miss him.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I remember, like, you know, him and I used to sit and have our, like, yearly strategic planning meeting
Yes.
of, like, talking about where's my life going to go, and
Yeah.
I really looked at him as a mentor, so when I heard he
Right.
passed, it was real a shock.
Yes.
But how was it for you and for your family?
Oh, it was really like we were in a dream of some sort, a nightmare maybe. And it took us a long time to really kind of wake up from it, because I think myself and my kids, we were all in a very hazy, daisy state where, it's like days become months and months became years, and we're still like, I can't believe where, this much time has passed and Bob is not here with us, or so it has been, it's been almost 3 years.
Wow.
And we're, every time we're like, I can't believe it. We still can't believe it.
Right.
And sometimes we don't even know how we've gotten here because of that state that we're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what was some of the ways that you found that you could cope with Brother Danish's loss?
I think one, probably for the kids going to school, having that routine was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other was, for me, I think I withdrew a lot.
Right.
So I didn't have to talk to people or explain to anybody, because I think a lot of times people want to comfort you, but they don't know what to say.
Right.
And sometimes people would say very uncomforting things.
Like what?
Well, it's like sometimes, especially when people would say to get over it. Not in those words, but ultimately what they're saying is, it's happened and now you have to move on with your life.
Oh.
And it's like, yeah, everybody knows, but it's like how a person moves on, it's going to be different. And your pace is going to be different. So somebody might see that you're not, it doesn't look like you're making progress, but there's a lot going on inside that needs to happen, and for you to come to terms with it.
Right.
So sometimes the things that people say, it's like, oh, it's been, 6 months, or it's been a year, it's been 2 years.
Right.
What are you doing with your life? What's the direction you're heading in? And these are things like, yes, it's important to think about the future, but we really were not in a state to look ahead. Like, we were just happy we could see the end of the day.
Right.
And when you're in that state and somebody asks you, so where are you going to be in 10 years? You're like, oh my God, you're doing 3,000 days. You're like, let me just get through this day.
Right.
And if I can keep that up, then maybe I will, be able to think about a week.
For sure.
So those are some of the things where, although people have good intentions, it might not be the right way to approach a person who's in that grieving process.
For sure, of course. And it's been 3 years, but like you said, it's still so unreal in some ways, right?
Yeah. Very true.
And what kind of supports, if you will, did you get around you? Like, what kind of things did you do to sort of, not feel so alone, if that makes sense?
I think that's a good question. I felt that, mashallah, I have 4 kids.
Right.
So we did support each other. My mom is with us as well.
Okay, great.
And she was a great support and is a great support.
Right.
And alhamdulillah, I received financial support, so that made a big difference.
For sure.
And in fact, I think sometimes within our Muslim communities, we don't really talk about what our family is going to do when the breadwinner is gone.
Right.
And I would, encourage families to have those discussions while everybody is present.
Right.
And can take actions to, ensure if there's insurance or something, so that, people, you're not scrambling.
At the very end, right.
Yes, thinking about, okay, now that this person is gone, how are we going to live? Where are we going to live? How are we going to pay rent, or all of those things? So I think it's interesting, because every time we go for a khutbah or, any kind of Islamic lecture, we're always hearing about death as, just a doorstep away kind of thing.
Right.
Yet we don't really work on practical preparation.
Right.
We do a lot of we think about, doing good deeds to send it forward.
Mm-hmm.
But the practical aspect of how's your family actually going to be taken care of,
right.
that's very important.
For sure.
And I think we need to have those discussions, inshallah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And just what advice would you give to somebody who's experienced a loss or is grieving?
Gosh, I don't know what I could say except that just take it one day at a time. Just get to the end of that day.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even though your heart is grieving, you're still grateful. And I think sometimes people have a hard time understanding that. Like, I'm grateful for everything that I have. I'm grateful for what I don't have. But at the same time, I'm still feeling extreme sadness.
For sure.
So, and it doesn't mean like when you're in that state, you can't laugh at things. You know, somebody says something funny, you laugh.
Right.
Or you appreciate, you know, the beautiful sunset, or, you know, somebody made amazing food, it's great. But that sadness is something that it's like, it's just there.
Right.
And I don't know, I guess sometimes it makes people uncomfortable as well.
That you're
You're sad.
You're sad. Oh,
yes.
yeah.
So you can't really show it, because I find like some of those, you know, when you're experiencing certain things, makes people uncomfortable because they don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to deal with you. And the thing is, like, I don't really need somebody to say anything or do anything. And I'm really grateful for my friends who would just, you know, sometimes call me up and say, hey, let's meet up for a coffee, or, you know, oh, we're all going out for dinner, why don't you come?
Right.
And to be okay when I say, I don't think so, I'm not going to join you guys.
Right.
But that they keep inviting me. And I think that's really important, because, you know, every day is different. Sometimes you feel like, yes, I would like to get out of the house. And sometimes you feel like, you know what, I just don't think I can really deal with any conversation today.
Right. And that's fine.
Yes.
It's your process, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody's different. You know?
Exactly.
But that's actually really great to hear. Like, you're right. It's like, you know, just because, you know, as friends, like, we don't, or with family, we invite you and you don't come, doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue.
Exactly.
Right.
And I guess the advice that I would give others is, if you have someone in your life who has experienced this, that you just keep connected with them and let them guide you on what they exactly need, because like you said, everyone is different.
Right.
So for some people, they might need more social interactions, and some people might not.
Right.
So let them lead, but always invite and keep it open.
Right, that's great. Well, I remember, you know, when I came to see you after there was I'm trying to remember what we called it, but there was a get together at the mosque, right?
Oh yes, I think it was a dinner.
I think so, and I was there. I remember, and I just remember seeing how brave you were, and like, you know, and I'm sure that you were, you know, there was a level of shock, obviously, that you were dealing with as well. But you were so, you know, brave. I just want you to know that. And like,
thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, and you know, it's obviously it's definitely not easy being, you know, now a single mother with 4 kids, and so I really commend you for doing all that you're doing to take care of yourself and your kids. And
thank you.
Yeah, and so do you have any final words before we go?
I think this idea of talking about grief and not talking about it and making it okay that people experience grief over a lot of different things, and not having to dismiss that feeling or saying that, you know, if you're grateful you wouldn't feel it. You can be both is one of the things that I've discovered.
For sure.
You can be grateful and sad.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't think it's an indicator of your iman if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling lonely. Ultimately, yes, we know that Allah is there for us, and so we're never totally alone. But human companionship is a different thing.
Absolutely.
And we all need it. So I think for anybody who's feeling it, you know, I'd encourage them to reach out. And sometimes if they do need like a professional, a counselor, it's totally worth it. I think they should totally go for it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. All right, everyone. So until next week, if you you heard it here, if you have somebody who's lost a loved one, or if you're currently going through a difficult time, just know that we're with you and that you're, reach out to us. It'd be great to hear from you. Take care.